Namaste and welcome to urban.chatterati. This is Abhinav Prakash. And today I have with me a very special guest who needs no introduction, Sai Deepak, to discuss the recent blockbuster movie, The Kashmir Files, and what it tells about the cultural landscape of India, what people want, and what they are being presented in Bollywood and the other forums of the cultural expression. So, Sai Deepak, welcome to the show.
Namaste, Abhinav. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Sai. So, Sai, Kashmir Files has been a super hit. It's a blockbuster. The cinema halls are being forced to add more screens now, and even those cinema halls are now overflowing with the audience. It's a publicity by word of mouth. It seems the country has rallied behind this movie, just like once they rallied behind the Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana. How do you see this phenomena?
So, I think something's really afoot in terms of reading the pulse of the people. It's extraordinary, and I'm grateful that we are living in these times. The good fortune that I don't think the last 2 or 3 generations enjoyed of seeing this happen. And that too, you see, at the end of the day, Ramayana Sagar or Mahabharata for that matter, Ramayana or Mahabharata for that matter, they happened on the small screen. And credit goes to the makers, their passion and their conviction that it managed to reach that kind of scale and that kind of audience. But on the big picture, on the big screen, so to speak, it's been a while since somebody has managed to verbalize and vocalize their emotions. And people are finally saying we have had some semblance of change on the political front. It's time we saw those changes spill over to the cultural front. And पिछले 2-3 सालों में जितना भी बकवास नेटफ्लिक्स में बाकी सारे ओटीटी प्लेटफॉर्म से हो रखा है, आई थिंक वो सारा फ्रस्ट्रेशन मिला के इसमें दिख रहा है। See, आपको इस संस्कृति और इस समाज और इस सभ्यता के साथ क्या घृणा है? What is your problem? It's a question that they've been asking. So much so that even genocides that we have been put through, you're not even willing to show that. And every day there's a movie that is released that takes massive pleasure in guilt-tripping Hindus. I think ये सबका एक मिश्रित reaction है. And in that sense, while I would say that Mr. Vivek Agnihotri has benefited from that particular frustration, I believe that he deserves to benefit from that particular frustration simply because he's put in the effort. Every scene in this movie, I think, shows a very deep attachment. Clearly, the research that he has undertaken over the last few years has affected him personally, and it has reflected on the screen very, very clearly. So it takes a lot of effort to strike a balance between emotionally getting invested in the script and the project and also not being carried away by the emotions so much so that you do not pay attention to objectivity or facts. Both have been done justice to here. So I think I'm happy that he's reaping the benefits of it. I don't think this is a benefit at all. This is, I call it civilizational duty that he's discharged, and the society is rewarding him with attention. And I hope this opens the floodgates.
True. But Sai, many people are now commenting, especially those on the liberal side and the usual suspects on the left and the Islamist spectrum. They're saying that this is a bigoted movie. This movie is meant for hate mongering, demonizing the minority community. And this is the movie which should have been made with much more sensitivity, much more balance of view, and so on. So do you think that it is appropriate to show such stark brutality of what happened, which can perhaps, promote more animosities between the communities, as these people are talking about?
I think if at all there is any criticism that I have of the movie, brutality कम दिखाया है और थोड़ा ज्यादा दिखाना चाहिए था, क्योंकि ये हुआ है तो दिखाने में क्या प्रॉब्लम है. Secondly, ये सारे जितने भी बुद्धिजीवी हैं, I don't think any of them spoke up when Haider was released. There's not a single reference or a proper reference to the genocide of the Kashmiri Hindu community as part of Vishal Bharadwaj's Haider. Everybody was actually, they were heaping encomia on this movie, basically saying, kitna sensitive movie hai and all that. The man effectively ended up showing the entire Kashmiri Hindu community as the mukbirs of the Indian army and the Indian state in his passing references, and therefore, in a sly manner, justified the so-called reaction of the natives of the valley. If that is the malevolence with which you're willing to suppress genocide, and not just suppress, even justify genocide, no wonder आज आपको एक कांटा चुभा है 100%. See, at the end of the day, one is on the political front, इनका तो कोई ठिकाना नहीं रहा. Okay. Now, on the academic front, on the history front, Vikram Sampath and others have written so much that वहां पे भी इनका घर उजड़ रहा है. Okay. अब बचा तो सिर्फ ये पॉप कल्चर. अगर ये भी गया तो खाएंगे क्या ये लोग? Okay. तो यहाँ पे तो it's a question of livelihood. It is a question of the public effectively saying, if you wish to survive in this fraternity and as far as this industry is concerned, at least do justice to facts and don't suppress. Okay. I don't think the public is saying, show what we want to see. The public is saying, show us the facts, don't suppress it, don't brainwash it, rather don't whitewash it and don't deny it. So I'm very happy that Barnaul के sales अभी इतने बढ़ गए हैं, and I'm not at all surprised at the reactions. I just hope we don't make movies only to irk the other side, but to actually present our stories. Because you see, I don't think we should see this as a reactionary movement. It is only partly reactionary. But more than anything else, it is serious real-time education that we need as a people. Because the Kashmiri experience has multiple lessons for everybody else, not just Kashmiris. So I'm not at all surprised at the reactions. More power to Mr. Vivek Agnihotri and more like-minded people.
Yeah. But you brought out a very important point. It is very important to tell these stories. And so far, Hindus specifically have not been telling their stories. And whenever they have tried to speak, whether it's the Kashmir, whether it's the Mopla massacres of the Hindus, or it's the Marij Jhapi massacres by the communist stormtroopers, they have been suppressed, denied, ignored, demonized, or basically saying what happened to you happened for good, just like Congress is doing these days over the Kashmiri ethnic cleansing. So how important, or let's say how much progress have Hindus made in the last few years in presenting their stories to the world?
So it's unfortunate that a society that has produced such great epics is now having to re-educate itself on storytelling and the importance of storytelling. Okay, because Mahabharata, according to me, the inspiration for inception comes from Mahabharata, because it's a story within a story within a story. It's a specific form of construction of a narrative. Okay, so considering that, I think there's a great history. Now we are learning to reclaim that particular space, and it's extremely important. So I believe that intellectualism ke multiple levels hote hain. So one is core scholarship, which puts in the grunt work. It slogs itself out, collects all the material, provides something which is extremely rigorous. So sorry, I think there is a call that came. Yeah. So not everybody can read this kind of a scholarship because it's going to be full of statistics and data and whatnot. I'll give you a very clear example. Arun Shori's books, according to me, are the benchmark when it comes to rigorous scholarship. But if you were to ask me from a readability perspective, unless and until you're an advanced learner or you're seriously committed to that particular subject, you may not be able to digest these books beyond the point. From the point of view of lucidity. This is not a criticism. That is exactly how he should have written what he wanted to write, because he was preparing the foundation for scholarship. Okay. Then comes the second level, where you have public intellectuals who are in a position to summarize this, present the saransh in a way which people can relate to. But most importantly, the multiplier effect will always come through arts, through the realm of let's say storytelling and whatnot. All our work put together cannot match the impact of this one movie. Because at the end of the day, jitna bhi you try to reach the mind, it is ultimately the heart that responds, and that's where the emotions effectively start. And that trigger is what generates a certain churn. So I think it's extremely important that we occupy this particular space. And the best part is, I think, I must say this even candidly, I've said this even to Mr. Vivek Agnihotri, which is that from a commercial filmmaker, for him to have made this fantastic transition, I think it has broken so many glass ceilings. He has shattered many misconceptions. What people thought he was or was not capable of, he has responded to all his critics on such a sensitive subject. Imagine, this is such a sensitive subject. Had it misfired, it would have gone terribly wrong.
Yes.
Right? And he's done brilliant justice to this. Now I'm asking myself, who else could have done this movie, or who else could have done justice to this movie? I'm not able to find a replacement for Mr. Vivek Agnihotri at this point. The only other person who
certainly
no one in Bollywood, no one in Bollywood. In fact, Kashmiri Panditon ke bare mein khul ke agar kisi ne baat kiya tha, it's according to me, and someone you would associate this particular position with. Mani Ratnam was the first one to talk about exodus of Kashmiri Pandits as part of Roja, where Arvind Swami's character has a very clear conversation with the terrorist, asking, how did you evict all these people who've been living for generations together? Okay. So if you follow Mani Ratnam's trajectory, so to speak, Roja hua, I think he was trying to atone for the sins that he committed as part of Roja in Bombay, because now the blame had to be laid at our doors. उसके बाद ये पूरी तरह से हार्ड लेफ्ट चले गए थे. Okay, especially after the attack, I think terrorists had attacked his residence also, I think in Chennai or Bombay, one of these two places, and then his entire position had changed. So I believe that I can't think of any other person who could have done justice to this. He has revived the importance of story building. अगर किसी को ये प्रोपेगेंडा लगता है, ये प्रोपेगेंडा नहीं है, ये स्टोरी टेलिंग है. आप अपने शब्दावली को चेंज करो. इसको प्रोपेगेंडा नहीं कहते हैं. प्रोपेगेंडा का मतलब ये होता है कि आप झूठ को 10 बार बोले जा रहे हैं. यहाँ पे सच है. You have not been able to rebut even one fact that he has presented. And look at the confidence of the filmmaker. Disclaimer में ये खुल के बोल रहे हैं. ये disclaimer नहीं है. ये ownership का statement है. A disclaimer is meant to distance the content from the makers, to say we don't intend to hurt sentiments and all of that. He's so confident in what he's put out. Yes. He's very clear about the research that he has done.
Yes, because those are true incidents. But Sai Deepak, one of the most powerful tool in the hand of the left and the communists have been their dominance in the cultural space. Right. When you walk on, so they have a very, I think they have a very superior understanding of how the cultural space works as compared to the non-left in India. So I'm from JNU, that. So in JNU, when you walk in, you see all these mega posters of the left parties. They're meant to dominate the mind space. This is what you are seeing 24/7. This is Correct. A subtle propaganda. This is a subconscious. This is impacting the subconscious and all. What can the Hindus do better than the left when it comes to the capturing the cultural space and mind space? Now, of course, we have been great in the past, but let's talk about the present.
The present, according to me, would be, first of all, storytelling requires clarity and articulation. Okay. So whenever I've seen the average Hindu, whether it's a man or a woman or any other gender for that matter, present its point of view. गुस्सा बहुत है, लेकिन articulation में थोड़ा problem है. Okay. Maybe because gussa itna hai that the mind is processing so much that it's not reaching the tongue in the manner it is supposed to. Okay. So I think, first of all, it has to start with this. Regardless of the profession you're in, and regardless of whether you're in the business of storytelling or not, articulation is something that I think Hindus must relearn over and over again, because it's extremely critical in our respective spaces. Look at it this way. Is articulation less of an imperative when you're actually having a conversation or an argument in your office space or in your friend circles or in campus politics or on social media or anywhere else? It is articulation. So storytelling is a different level of articulation and a different manner of articulation, but fundamentally that's what you're looking at. Now, therefore, those programs which effectively are trying to re-educate our children on history, like initiatives in multiple places, private initiatives in multiple places, and who are trying to build future leaders, must also focus on storytelling, must also focus on leadership. Now, on articulation. In this regard, I think the best example and the clearest example that we all have, notwithstanding my several criticisms of the Prime Minister, is Mr. Narendra Modi's ability to weave a fantastic narrative. Okay, he knows how to weave a story based on facts, and he knows what effectively reaches out to people. So therefore, there are multiple primary examples in front of us, but I think it must start with revival of certain forms of street art. Communists are fantastic at street art, if you've noticed that. Right? Especially performance of dramas on streets and whatnot, that's where it starts. Storytelling का मतलब ये नहीं है कि हर आदमी के पास या हर औरत के पास 1000 crore या 100 crore का बजट है और वो जाके मूवी बनाए. Multiple local forms of doing it exist. Why haven't we used Harikatha as a means of presenting the stories of of brutality that we have suffered? There are existing means and there are existing traditions. तो ये past की बात नहीं है. उन ट्रेडिशंस को आज के संदर्भ में इसको इस्तेमाल करना और इसको प्रयोग करना इंपॉर्टेंट है. Okay, if you go to let's say any local part of, let's say any regional part of this country, or where languages other than Hindi and English are spoken, how many people would be able to relate to the language of the Kashmir Files? They'll be able to relate to the imagery and the broad sentiment, but beyond that, जो बारीकियां हैं, वो तो हर भाषा में अलग-अलग होंगी. So it's important to decentralize this. It's really important to use the favorite word of the left, which is completely against their own values, to democratize this particular space. And that's only possible if you bring in more languages. Over the last few days, I don't know for what reason people think that I'm somehow associated with this movie. I'm not associated with the movie. I'm just a great admirer of this movie. I've been getting messages from across the country asking me to pass on a message to Mr. Vivek Agnihotri. So I'm using your platform for this, that he must seriously consider coming out with translations, or let's say the remakes or whatever it is, and so that more people are able to relate to the Kashmiri experience. So I think language is one and democratization is another.
Yes, and this is very important. See, in JNU, I was there in JNU during the Congress rule, and I've seen these comrades coming to me and justifying the ethnic cleansing of the Kashmiri Pandits, saying that, they were the landlords, and they were oppressing the minority there. Now, this is very funny. They would say that the Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir were oppressing the minority there. But this was with the propaganda. I've seen people from UP and Bihar, saying that who bothers about Hindus in Kashmir when the majority is being suppressed in Kashmir. On 26 January in JNU, we used to have these food stalls by the foreign countries. So foreign students used to keep food stalls. And I think it was 13, 12, something, I'll confirm the year. They tried to put up a food stall of the Kashmir in that foreign country's food stall. And we have to fight against it. In fact, I've written a detailed report. I'll WhatsApp it to you, the old article, 7-8 years old article. So they have been doing this thing for a very long time, and majority of the people don't understand the Kashmir issue. That's the problem in this country. They think it's about simply Pakistan intervening in the Kashmir. The people on the left thinks it's just about the oppression by the Indian state. So I think we need to re-educate them about the importance of Kashmir. I think this movie does it brilliantly. In the last speech, when he talks about Natya Shastra and other thing, actually written in Kashmir. Most of the people don't know about it. Correct. Right? So,
I'll just add to your point on this particular point. I think it's an extremely sensitive point that you've picked up, and it's a nuance that most people don't catch, which is, if you look at pre-Marxist representations of the Islamic period, okay, they're very, very clear about the fact that they were killed for religious reasons. Okay. Once Marxism and the post-colonial school is established under the Nehruvian dispensation, then this class war template is retrospectively applied to Islamic invasions. Okay, so the narrative that all these killings were primarily because of economic disparities comes about only after the Nehruvian dispensation. Tab tak to iska koi naam nishan nahi tha. So I'll give you a common example. I think you should read this book by this guy called Moinuddin Khan, who effectively wrote on the period between 1857 and 1947. On the rise of Islam in Bengal and partition. Even there he starts, wahan pe jitne bhi movements ho rahe the, okay, it's because the zamindars were Hindus, whereas the laborers were Muslims. Okay, same argument is applied to Assam. Mopla rights ke liye bhi yahi bola jata hai, Kashmir ke liye bhi yahi bola jata hai. Now they've gone a step further. Apparently, Bin Qasim was effectively doing a favor to people by freeing them from the clutches of evil Brahmins. Matlab, is Marxist template ko itna piche dhakel diya hai that now you're going back to the Middle Ages, or even let's say 10th century and 11th century. So this I've hinted in the first book, where I specifically said Middle Eastern coloniality has wizened up by using colonial tropes of class war to reinvent its own atrocities and then present it as this is an act of the oppressed against the oppressor, and this is not to be treated as a genocide on a religious basis.
Yes, I'll add something more to it. Is in the Marxist worldview, in the left-wing worldview, it's not just about the class struggle. They actually believe that Abrahamic monotheism is superior to the Hindu paganism and polytheism. They actually believe that. I've talked to many of them. In their construct, monotheism is a revolutionary change which brings society towards more rational state. So they actually see Islam as being superior to Hinduism. This is a very deeply ingrained thought in the left wing. And I'm talking about Hindus, I'm not talking about others. The left-wing Hindus, they actually believe that Islam is superior because it is monotheistic. It is much more rational. So
Wow.
we should not underestimate that aspect as well. It's not just class struggle. So
Right.
their entire thing is to whitewash, destroy the whole society, rebuild monotheism so that it can be succeeded by socialism and communism and whatnot. The
Okay.
fourth Abrahamic religion, that is communism.
Okay.
But coming to the last point, Sai Deepak, you were there in PVR Plaza that day when the premiere happened in Delhi. I was there. We could see the atmosphere. And we're seeing the
Right.
same atmosphere everywhere where people are spontaneously standing up and telling their stories, not just the Kashmiris, but also non-Kashmiris talking about it. And
Right.
one point which is coming up repeatedly, that we have to stand by each other.
Right.
That no community can think that it can be indifferent to the sufferings of the other communities. And this is something which has been a very problematic aspect in the Hindu society, that we don't
Right.
really relate to what's happening to the other communities. Looking at in the wider context of the recently concluded elections, especially in UP, where BJP has come to power again with a full majority by an extraordinary consolidation of the Hindu votes. In
Right.
Western UP, not only Jats voted for BJP, but also the core vote bank of Mayawati has now
Ji.
been split.
Right.
A huge proportion went to the BJP, and that's why BJP was able to sweep the Western UP.
Right.
Do you see something is changing overall in the Hindu polity?
100%. And perhaps I'm going to say something which a lot of people may either dislike or may not be able to relate to. What has happened is when you've presented a very clear goal or a cause, in the process, people are willing to look at the cause as opposed to their sectarian identities or caste identities. Okay. So Hindu unity को अचीव करने के बहुत सारे तरीके हैं. एक तरीका ये हो सकता है कि आप पूरी तरह से कहिए कि एग्जिस्टिंग स्ट्रक्चर्स को पूरी तरह से हटा दीजिए और मिटा दीजिए, तब जाके हिंदू यूनिटी बनेगा. The other way is to basically say, rally people around these causes and show them what happens if they don't stand by each other. Okay. So according to me, today, multiple stories are coming out either from Hyderabad as to what happened in Nizam or what happened in 1971 in Bengal. Okay. And what happened in Kalaburgi in Karnataka when Operation Polo was started. Okay. All of these stories are coming out and people are able to relate to all of this. So pain is one way of bringing people together because that results in clear identification of the outgroup. So this works not just at the political level, it equally works at the societal level. So I think this movie has managed to trigger another wave of thinking in terms of, is there a way of uniting this particular community wherein people are wondering, will I have to give up my language or my other identities at the altar of Hindu unity? ये जो डर जो बैठा है, इसको overcome करने का यही सबसे अच्छा तरीका है, which is to say, nobody is asking you to give up anything. That's not the Hindu way. All we are saying is, please understand the big picture. It is in your own interest to stand by each other and to consolidate your position.
But do you think that now the time is ripe for many more such movies like Mari Jhapi, Nizam's Rule, Mopla, Direct Action Day, and lots of other such cases?
100%. So I am right now waiting for Rajamouli's book, movie RRR. Okay, because इनके ट्रेलर पे बहुत सारे reactions आए थे, because he ended up showing one of the primary characters, Komaram Bhim, as wearing the skull cap and a Muslim attire. Okay, when in fact during that period, the Nizam effectively, more than the British, it was the Nizam who was responsible for tyranny and oppression, both religious and economic, as far as the princely state of Hyderabad is concerned. So I want to see if people, I want to firstly see how Rajamouli has presented that particular era. That's one. And two, in light of the honest representation of facts by Vivek Agnihotri, how are people going to react to any distortion, potential distortion by any other person? I want to see that.
Yes, we're all waiting for that movie. Sai Deepak, thank you. And I think the Kashmir Files is already much more influential than the tons of theses written in JNU, Ashoka University, and that garbage called Tata Institute of Social Sciences, in which whether it's a gender studies, whether it's the rural development, you have only the study on the Kashmir nationalism unfortunately funded by our own institution, but supported by the separatists like Atharjia and other things. So I think, we have finally found a counter, not just in the academic space, but also in the cultural space. But thanks a lot, Sai, for your valuable time. Hoping to invite you soon again. You're a busy person. I know that, but I'll insist that you come again to the channel. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure, Abhishek. Thank you so much.
Thank you, audience, for listening to us. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hoping to see you soon. Namaste.